So the Art of Flocking was a youth program for 12 to 14-year-olds that combined Adrienne Marie Brown's emergent strategy, where she talks about the art of flocking. And the Art of Flocking is a program for young cultural stewards and Earth Art Seed. Art of Flocking is a program developed for youth 12 to 14 in the Young Cultural Stewards and the Art Seed program that was developed inspired by Adrienne Marie Brown's emergent strategies and was a collaboration with a bunch of Chicago artists to use emergent strategies as inspiration for curriculum. So the Art of Flocking comes out of the book where Adrienne Marie Brown talks about developing inspiration to heal and for activist work by connecting and relating to nature. And so when we're talking about flocking, the art of flocking comes out of watching birds move together and how one will kind of come out of formation and move to the front, or but they're all moving together. Or like if the flock starts to turn, then someone else steps up. Another bird flies into leadership, and that there's no one leader. That depending on where the direction is headed, that a leader will emerge from the flock. So we developed this curriculum based off of inspiration from that idea, from emergent strategies. As a part of our orientation to create the curriculum, we met with different artists from Sapphire and Crystals, which is the first Black woman art collective in Chicago. I think nationally maybe too. And we also met with Hector Duarte, who is a Latino artist here in Chicago. And we met talking with them about their processes and the way they create work and why they create work and how their work connects with community and community engagement, healing, and just being a way that they can reflect the things that matter to them through their art and hopefully inspire their communities, like the way that Hector creates murals all over Chicago, murals all over Pilsen where he lives and works, and his studio being kind of open, and so we listened to stories from them and just started to think about the ways that we could take what they were saying, different ideas that they work with, like Hector works with butterflies, Sapphire and Crystals works with altars, and bring them into the work that we're doing with youth. And so some of the ways that happened is, well, for our program in Young Cultural Stewards, we worked with the Flower of Life. So Hector works with the Flower of Life in his work, like touching on the themes of oneness and that we're all connected. And so we took the 6 different circles of the Flower of Life and created a theme for each circle, and then in the end combined them. So we had community, we had nature, we had family, we had friends, we had self, and for each circle, and then we combined them in the end to talk about how they're all connected and what each youth is really bringing to each one of those. And and then with Sapphire and Crystals, we had an altar every morning that was inspired by that work, and the altar was in the middle of our peace circle that we held every morning. And we started talking about ancestors and the people who had passed away in our lives, or even people that we weren't close to, but like historical ancestors like Sojourner Truth or Martin Luther King, and talking about how the things that they have done, or the energy that they carried in life, how it can still be inspiring, um, and also even a lot of the youth were processing death, actually, more recent deaths in our group. So it was a way to be able for them to be able to process what it means to have someone who you what it means to have someone who you love no longer be here, but still feel that they're with you in some way. A lot of what ended up coming up in our group was that our youth came in with a lot of stuff that they were processing from families, from things happening in their communities, and it became it actually was at the forefront of anything that we had planned. We had to put it at the forefront of anything that we had planned is in the curriculum, because things and emotional traumas that come up really interfere with the ease with which you can relate to other youth. And so there was a lot of conflict just basic everyday relating to one another, because youth were getting triggered in different ways. And I think what it is that we ended up focusing on was just like, what does it mean to be triggered? What does it mean to have an emotion come up in you that just to have an emotion come up in you, and to give youth the tools to recognize that even though there's something really intense going on in you, that you have a choice to decide what it is that you're going to do with that emotion, whether it's take a few breaths, take a walk outside, take a walk, like kind of, leaving the room, or, deciding, like what is a more peaceful way to use that emotion, or to reapproach the issue when you're coming back into the room the next day or something like that. So a lot of the times what we would do is we have a peace circle every morning. And so if there was a conflict that happened the day before, we would come the next morning and we would have a circle on it and just be like, how did what so-and-so say to you make you feel? What are some other options that you may choose, like when you are feeling heightened? And and I would also share very honestly, like what kind of situation that puts me in as a facilitator, when there's a lot of like heat and angry energy, and I have to, break that up, and the effects that it has on me as a facilitator, and then each other being in different places. We had developed a curriculum on the flower of life, and a curriculum that really wove in different healing elements like meditation and like sacred space. So building a hoop house that we got to be in, and they really saw it as a place where that was their own, that they made, that they could relax in and even fall asleep in. And then visualizations and yoga. And so all of these things, the idea was to implement this curriculum. And then within the first week, it was pretty clear that there was a lot of different layers of things that were happening with the youth, that it wasn't going to be just like, this is what our plan was for the day, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do this and then this and then this and then we're gonna go home and then we're gonna see each other tomorrow. Like it was, um, there was a lot of resistance to the things that we had to offer because, well, number one, the youth definitely felt like they they wanted more freedom. Like age youth at that age really are pushing back against any kind of authority. So they wanted freedom, and it was a summertime, and um, being in Chicago public schools, like it can be very like there's no room to be who you want. And while our curriculum was kind of designed to explore who are you, what do you want to do in life, even the idea of having a curriculum, I think, and having like a structure was a lot for the youth to walk into. And so, and on top of that, they were all dealing with like a lot of personal things that, should I keep going? Or I think that it was it being summertime, and we had developed this whole curriculum with peace circles and yoga and meditation and flower of life and the different elements of community and how they link up together. But when the summer started, and the youth came in, they were really wanting just a lot of freedom, and it was hard to kind of keep this structure every day, just getting them to read poems or look at videos, or there's just like this huge desire to be outside, and play and connect with each other. Like they just wanted to play. And as the summer kind of went on, I mean, actually within the first week, it was very clear that there was conflict that was going to come up. All of the youth come in with a certain level of trauma, I think, basically from just being in Chicago public schools and being told to like be in this very structured environment every single day, like kind of produces this like, when you talk, you only talk like this, you move like this. And so they just wanted to be really, really free and open. And and then just stuff going on in communities that are challenging, or from home that are challenging. And so when you're in relationship, even adults, it's hard to like be in relationship and connect with one another and like hold what your partner just said to you or what your friend said to you last night. And so youth don't have any of those skills yet. And I actually don't think that they're really given those social emotional skills given in schools. So that was that ended up being a big part of the program is, like, what do you do when there was this huge kind of dichotomy, this split of like, we want to play together, we want to be friends, and yet you keep triggering this thing inside of me that also makes me want to fight you. So there was like a lot of lessons around, okay, well, you all really do like each other. Let's just acknowledge that, like, you want to be together. And how is it that we can acknowledge that that we want to connect with each other, and that we need to give each other space to have all of the feelings that each person needs to have, and to develop learning skills to be able to acknowledge when an emotion is coming up in you, and you can decide to do something besides like attack, or you can decide to take a break or take a breath. And I think that I definitely did see the youth start to decide, not to make different choices, like acknowledging their patterns, like, oh, like I'm always making contact with people aggressively or not aggressively. It's just my habit to just like touch and push or grab, and that, can trigger other people. And so youth were definitely by the end of it making conscious decisions to be like, okay, like I see what this does to you, and even though maybe it's not bothering you now, it could potentially build up to bothering you. And so making decisions to for the good of the whole community. And it was just, that being said, it was challenging to step into a program, expecting to kind of like be in the situation where everyone's really receptive, and really walk into a situation where nobody was receptive, or there was a few people that were receptive, but they were highly influenced by the ones who weren't, and everybody was walking in with a lot of trauma. And so like my desire to have more trauma-based learning going into the program, and even more experience working in restorative justice and peace circles through conflict, because I've done restorative justice and peace circles just as a tool to connect with each other and build community, without conflict, but haven't had much work using those tools, um, as a way to resolve conflict and bring people close together. So I gained those tools during the program by using by using restorative justice through conflict. Um, but yeah, there was a lot of different skill sets that I kind of had to experientially acquire, which was cool. Along with the so along with the curriculum development, with yoga and meditation and the Flower of Life curriculum, the social emotional skills and the development of those elements of being in community and with one another were all woven in together and were a huge part of the way that we design the curriculum. Building these social emotional skills was really a great way for the youth to start to connect deeper with one another. I think in a way that a lot of them hadn't even really thought of. Like thought of thinking of your emotions in a more objective way. Like, oh, this is something that I don't have to react to in the way that I feel, and it was a huge amount of harm reduction that happened, which, as a result of that awareness, which really did eventually start to help the group kind of start thinking on behalf of each other, and acknowledge each other's strengths and weaknesses. And like we did an appreciation circle at the end of camp, and the youth were able to see what it was in each one of their peers that they appreciated, which I think is a really good form of leadership building. Just being able to be in a space where other people see your strengths even more than you do. And I think that using that and that awareness of your strengths, you really start to develop a sense of empowerment. And then each youth begins to decide whether or not they want to, practice what it is that they have, the skills that they've developed through the summer, the skills that they are being witnessed in. Yeah, so it kind of linked, I don't know, that's all. The future that I see for Young Cultural Stewards and Art Seed is really that it's just super youth-led. It was interesting to come in with these ideas and try to implement them with youth, and really just see the youth like super take to some things and like come up with completely other ideas. And so instead of trying to take your whole thing and like make the youth do what it is that we want to do. I mean, I think that we really underestimate the wisdom and the power and the creativity of youth, and that Young Cultural Stewards and Art Seed would be a space where um, we we kind of hand over the reins and be like, I really, really trust that you know what you want, or that you can discover what it is that you want or what it is that you're curious about, and that you can really lead me to help facilitate a space for you to grow in the way that you want. So, to me, what that looks like is, uh, to me, what that looks like is uh, actually a lot more field trips. I think that going off of the idea of meeting artists and going to different places in Chicago, that the youth can kind of decide what it is that they're interested in, and we can just help to be like, okay, what's out here that's like that, that's already happening, that we can make you a part of. You can go and like experience this. And then really just a lot more questions, like facilitating a space where youth can ask questions and then like answer their own questions through field trips, through art, or activities that they get to design themselves, so that especially in the summertime, it becomes a place where there is a lot more freedom, and it's like freedom that is designed, that's like real freedom, because it's like a freedom that's designed by you as a youth, and it's not like an idea of freedom that an adult has for you, So, yeah, that's what I'll say. I think it is so important for youth across different parks to come together and learn about each other. And because Chicago is so segregated, so literally you will have different, like a bunch of different cultures coming together and learning about each other. And like some of the stories from last summer of just, you know, youth, I think from Thule Park, and youth from Petrowski Park, and we all went to Pilsen, and some of the youth were like, "Oh wow, this is a Mexican neighborhood," and then like the Latinx youth were like, "Oh, like these are my people, and I get to like show you what it is to be in this neighborhood and like eat the foods that we eat," and like, um, I mean, I think that as adults we really really struggle to connect with one another, and if we can plant those seeds just as like in these formative years of 12 to 14, even before you go off to college, that like it's important to be curious and to be open and supportive of people who don't look like you, who don't talk like you, who just any other person, but if we can really start to if we can really start to make connections and have youth actually working together across parts, I think that um, it'll just be like a really great way for them to um, be able to go into a world that I think is evolving and expanding in a way um, that has to become more integrated, more interrelated. I think that like a lot of the problems going on with the world today are, oh, like you're that person and I'm this person, and so we can't get together. And um, if we start to kind of dissolve those perceptions by just like putting youth in the same space and being like, what do you all have in common? Or like, even if they aren't in the same space, but one of the things we talked about was having, like using technology to be like, okay, well, we have these cameras, we have these phones, like let's live feed our situation here and like ask questions, even though we're in different parts of the city, and then come together. So like starting to problem solve together and create together and go on field trips together and ask each other important questions, and having like really serious conversations about the similarities of our trauma, talking about trauma together. I mean, I think that it's so funny because trauma informed is like this interesting thing that I think that we it feels almost like a secret, like, oh, it's trauma informed. I know that this is a trauma informed class and that I'm learning trauma informed skills, but like I'm not supposed to talk about like your trauma. I'm not supposed to just lay it out there and be like, okay, there's trauma here. It's just supposed to be this like secret way of me like dealing with like the problems here. But if we can all, as adults and as youth, kind of come together across the city and be like, look, like we're all dealing with this trauma, and this is what my trauma looks like. This is what your trauma looks like. How is it similar? How can we support each other? And then I think that we can really start to build ways to heal and grow together and kind of like reimagine and imagine like new ways to create like to create ways of existing together, and yeah, that's it. Butterflies for me are the butterfly has been a large totem for me for a really long time, and for me it represents transformation. Just the idea, just the thought of being a caterpillar first and then you're a completely different element afterwards. Like that's alchemy, and it means that something really intense happened in the in between, the journey from caterpillar to butterfly. And when you start to really break it down, like it's not an easy thing. You kind of have to like butterflies, they eat a lot, and in order to like get ready for this, for cocooning themselves into this place where they then become liquid and they then, are in darkness, and they've just like completely disintegrated and become a nothing, like an entity that is soup, full of imaginal cells, and these cells start to create a new entity, a new being, out of the soup of the old stuff. Um, and then it starts to solidify, and then it emerges as this, as this butterfly. And then the idea that the wings are always in, like, are inside of the caterpillar, and they're always there, is just like so fascinating to me. And so this element of the butterfly and it connecting back to the themes of the art of flocking and nature. I think it's really profound because it really is relating it to the idea of complete transformation, which is a really tall order, because I think that it happens with a lot of personal awareness, it happens with a lot of personal effort, and it happens with a vision of what it is that we're transforming into. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes transformation just like happens. But I think that through Young Cultural Stewards and Art Seed, that our hope is to use the ideas and the trauma and the joys and the like the desires of the youth, and really show them that that is the stuff that we can use, that you use, and you consciously use to become something completely different. Something that is like beyond your wildest dreams. And like, what is the stuff that's in your soup is inspiration from different artists. It could be the emotions that you're struggling with, that you're having trouble with, that that kind of get in your way the whole time. It could be like your love of doing art or your love of basketball. It's just like you have to define what it is and what's in the soup, and then really showing youth through just like experiential projects, and youth leadership, that they can start to create their own way of being in the world that that is of their own creation. So you become your own butterfly. So I think that overall, that is like a beautiful metaphor and something that I would really want to kind of stay 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 connected to this throughout the journey with young cultural stewards. Um, and that it was just like so beautiful to see all of the butterflies in the culminating event, and all of the different, you know, just everyone who created their own butterfly wings. And the culminating event was just so beautiful because it was like all ages, you know, everybody, you know, we had a parade together. And it was just kind of a culminating expression of just being free and like playing in the beach and doing artwork and running around with butterfly wings. And so it was, I think, probably over most of the things that I experienced over the summer, it was like the vision for like one vision for freedom and for transformation, you know, that and also that sense of joy and play be accessible to everybody, like whenever they really need it, you know. So the art of flocking is a collaboration with a group of Chicago artists. And what we did was through Young Cultural Stewards and Artsy, we took inspiration from Adrienne Marie Brown's emergence strategy and the way that she talks about using nature to connect with activism, with cultural change, and being inspired by nature. So basically, what the art of flocking specifically talks about birds and talks about how birds flock together. But then also, like if there's a change of wind, one bird, you're going in a different direction and one bird will take over, so that there's not one bird that's one leader, that it changes, the leadership changes depending on which direction you're going in the wind. And so, yeah, the art of flocking is a combination of those readings from Emergent Strategy. It was also a combination of different artists throughout Chicago, learning from them, listening to them, artists from Sapphire and Crystals, which is the first Black women's collective here in Chicago, and also Hector Duarte, who is a Latino artist in Pilsen, also here in Chicago, and just merging their use of altars from Sapphire and Crystals, collage work, clay work, and Hector's use of butterflies and the flower of life, and printing in different ways, and creating curriculum designed to help youth be in relationship with themselves and community in a way that has no one leader, but how everybody develops their own sense of leadership and can step up and take control and take leadership whenever their particular skills are in need for the benefit of the whole community.